work that we've done. We've been empowered by the legislature 2 or 3 years ago, and our Kansas Fights Addiction Review Board was set up in to have a way to distribute monies that was awarded to each state by various lawsuits that have taken place in regards to the scourge of opioid epidemic that is our nation has faced for many, many years. And so this is a little different, these dollars, than appropriated dollars, because they actually have come in from different lawsuits that have been settled over the years. And so each state will receive over a period of time. So in Kansas, the total payout will come over 18 years. And the total amount projected is $340 million, so about $15 million a year if you annualize it. But it doesn't come at a specific rate, so a lot of it's front-loaded. So to date, we've received about $115 million. And so in response, and you'll see a list of the board members, and they all, different appointing authorities. For instance, myself, I was appointed chairperson by former Attorney General Schmidt when he was here, and you'll see the list of other board members. And I must say that the board is fully engaged. They all have interest in this subject matter, either by working in it or having people affected by this disease of addiction. And just as a sidelight, I just want you to know that this is not a job or something to do for me. It's really a passion. I'm in recovery, and if there wasn't somebody there 33 years ago, I'm sure I would be dead. And so by the grace of God, I've been clean and sober for 33 years. And over this time, I've been fortunate to have served in different positions. I've been in the legislature. I served as Secretary of Commerce. I've been CEO of a large behavioral health company, and plus very active in the recovery community. And so when I was asked to chair this committee, I very much have been, was humbled and honored, because I feel like this is a chance maybe to make a difference. And you would know this firsthand, because this is what you deal with every day. Usually the biggest challenge to getting anything done is where's the funding going to come from? And so, in a sense, this is manna from heaven to maybe make a difference in this world of addiction. And so we have this money that has been awarded to the state that is the Attorney General's office oversees it, and then we have formed a partnership. The Attorney General's office entered into a contract with the Sunflower Foundation. And the way that I look at the Sunflower Foundation is that they provide all of our back-end help, and they've been just crucial in the efforts that we've made so far. And so those efforts, and the board and myself, we realized that we don't really know what we have in the state of Kansas. I've been around, like I mentioned, I'm in recovery. I've worked in the recovery world. I've worked in the legislature. You would think that I'd have a pretty good grasp of all the different entities that touch alcoholics and addicts, but it's really kind of endless. And so what we hope to do in the innovative stage that's coming up after we get the needs assessment is to develop innovative ways to address the scourge of addiction. And one of the ways is just to find or encourage ways of collaboration. My belief is that there's probably enough money out there and there's enough help out there, but we don't really know what's out there. And so it's hard to work together if you don't know what's there to work with. And so we hope to develop ways to incent. Probably no better way to incent behavior than to put some dollars out there. And so that's what we'll be moving towards after we get the needs assessment here in the next few months, and then to develop ways to incent working together people ask me, well, what are you looking to achieve? And I go, well, it's hard to explain innovation because you're making up something that's new, but a lot of it will have to do with how do we work together in different communities. And you know, I envision maybe some of the proposals will come in from, you know, I'm from Western Kansas, so our population is, you know, not what it is in the eastern parts. There might be 10 counties or 5 counties that get together and you know, the sheriff's department, the police department, the emergency room, the doctors, the, you know, if there's a treatment facility, counselors, school counselors, you know, because really what I've found is that you don't have to go very far to find somebody that's been affected by this disease and people that are on the forefront. You know, we've had an effort with the KU hospital when I was at CEO of Valley Hope to provide a service, because I think at the time 50% of the people that presented at their emergency rooms were there because of an overdose or some sort of alcohol or drug problem. And so, you know, they could run up a bill in one day that would cover treatment. So that's just an example of a way that we hope to be able to provide better treatment. And I guess the bottom line, you know, we've done 4 RFPs. We've had over 200, maybe close to 300 applications. We've made, I think, 135 grants during this couple-year period of $24 million. So we recognize the need is right here today. But while we're working on our needs assessment and what you know, our future plan will be, we need to address some of the needs today. And so everyone's affected by this disease. There's been lots of effort and a lot of good work has been done around the state of Kansas, but it still presents a problem that I'm sure in each of your districts you hear about very often. So we wanted to come before you today and just give you an update on what we have been doing. There's a lot of money at stake here. As I mentioned, we're projected to receive about $340 million over 18 years. A lot of that will be front-loaded during the first 5 or 6 years. We're restricted in some ways by the court orders that guide what the monies will be used for, and we send reports in to them, as we'll furnish you in March our annual report. But we also have you know, the leeway to be innovative and to take advantage of having this funding in place. So Mr. Chairman, with that, I'll stop right there and field any questions.
Thank you, Pat. I guess the first question, I assume you have way more asks than you do have dollars to fill the needs.
Way more.
So you got an idea on dollars that request and dollars you said 15 million a year. So,
but if I'm guessing that we've had between 250 and 300 applications over the 4 RFPs, and we've granted 135 grants, and out of those, I think it's 85 total entities. So we make these grants for 1 year at a time, and so that doesn't preclude you from applying in the next year. It has to be, you can't just, you know, ask for an extension of the grant that you were received. And so, you know, having been around here, I can just guesstimate that if we gave away $24 million, we probably had ask of double that, but we can get the exact number to you.
I'm just curious. So 135 grants, you might have had, that might have been 50% then of what was asked for.
Yes.
Okay. Other questions? Senator Cluse.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is there a list of these organizations?
There is, and they will be posted, but in the meantime, we'll get you a list of the 135 that have been awarded grants.
And one follow-up, if it's all right.
Sure.
And so when we get that list, can you let me know which ones are faith-based and not faith-based?
Sure. I don't know if we have that as a discriminator, but it probably wouldn't be hard to figure out from that. I don't know if that was, it is, okay. It is. And you'll see, we tried to give you some information in some of those graphs that would see how it was split around the state and the different ways that we probably go out of our way to make sure that you know, we want deserving organizations and to receive these dollars, no matter what their background is. You know, one of the questions we had in the House was, you know, the new organizations, as long as they're a registered 501(c), and we're even, I think you guys passed legislation last year that allowed for for-profit organizations, and so we're developing rules around that, so.
Thank you.
Senator Petty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I noticed that you said they're just for 1 year. I wonder if, as this continues, are you looking at, because of course that's time consuming and costly for those organizations to reapply if they have something that really
Works.
Yeah. So are you considering looking for a longer term than just 1 year?
Yeah, and I'm making this up, but part of my dream would be that we would award, say, 5-year grants in this next innovative stage, and maybe it's a $5 million, and we offer that to 5 organizations that, and not just a organization, but maybe 20 organizations that would work together, and we'll, you know, through some sort of process that we'll develop, award $1 million a year for 5 years. That way they can get started and be sustaining, you know, just not a one-time hit and miss thing.
Thank you.
Other questions? Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your presentation. Pat, I have 2 questions. One, what's the largest grant that you gave?
Around 300. Yeah, and the needs assessment that we've awarded to the KU Research Department, what's their official name? Okay, so that's a $1.5 million, but it's really not part of the, you know, treatment and prevention process. We hired them to provide us an assessment of what all we do have and then what needs are out there. But typically the grant's between $200,000 and $300,000.
My follow-up question, do you, once you give the grant out like you gave at KU, do you ever go back after a year later and said, okay, we gave you this money, where did we get our bang for the buck? So it's kind of.
Yeah, absolutely, and we can furnish some of that information. I don't know, might call upon Krista just to give a.
I wouldn't think you'd do it for all of them, but I could sure see big ones and kind of cherry pick through there just to make sure that we're getting our money's worth.
Yeah, sure.
Well,
Chris
please
Machado with Sunflower Foundation, the director of the Kansas Fights Addiction Program. So we're, as he mentioned, the grant administrator, so just the backbone staff support. So for that, we have evaluation metrics that all grantees are reporting on, kind of like population reach, number of services provided, those kind of things. And then we also have SMART objectives that they all have to report on, and they created themselves. Since we funded so many different areas through the KFA board, there were over 40 different strategies. So some are prevention, they're doing presentations to the community versus actual direct treatment services. So it was hard to put the consistent metrics there, so they have their own unique SMART objectives as well that are measurable and they'll report on. So they have 6-month progress reports and final progress reports. And so we ask about potential impact as well as, of course, those metrics that we ask for. And then we'll also have some success stories, so we can share those in our annual report, or we already have some of those we could share in advance if you'd like.
Thank you. Other questions? Seeing none, thank you for being here today, Pat. Appreciate the update.
Senator. Yeah, and don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions about what we do, or especially over the next couple years as we develop this innovation. We want to work with all our partners, and obviously you'd be one of our great partners. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we'll have a briefing on the triennial legislative hearing on Community Service Block Grant Program and State Housing Update. Ryan Vincent, Executive Director, Kansas Housing Resource Corporation. Ryan, welcome, committee.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. It's an honor to see you all this frigid January morning. I try at least one session every year to come by and freeze with you all, so it's good to be here. It was also good to see Secretary George. We worked together years ago when he was the Secretary of Commerce. KHRC works very closely with the Department of Commerce, and it's good to see old friends. And of course, it's good to see you all. The one thing that has changed in my 20 years since I've been coming to present before you on different various housing updates is I finally broke down and I'm wearing reading glasses. So if you see me put those on, I'm just having to see. So thrilled to be here today, thrilled to really cover a couple different things. Hopefully you have our written testimony, which covers both the Community Services Block Grant, CSBG program. I'll introduce you to some key partners here a little bit later. Share some of the great successes that we've had with that program, administering this federal resource on your behalf. But I also have been asked to give a little bit more of a broad and general update on housing programs, particularly the state housing development resources we've been administering these past couple of years. So that's kind of what we're going to be trying to cover these next few minutes. I'm going to make sure that I can get this clicker to work here. Oh, it is perfect. I jumped ahead there. As far as who we are, Kansas Housing is a public corporation, a self-supporting nonprofit corporation. Our mission is simple, but so important. We help Kansans access the safe, affordable housing they need and the dignity they deserve. As far as who we work with, well, we work with bankers and realtors. We work with lenders and nonprofits. We work with government agencies of all levels. We work with you, our policymakers, to make sure that we're administering good programs that are efficient and effective to meet the needs of Kansans. Just a reminder about our oversight and how we're governed. KHRC is governed by a board of directors that's been appointed by the governor, that's been confirmed by the Senate. We are the State Housing Finance Agency on behalf of you all, the state. We administer a variety of primarily federal housing programs, but lately a lot of state housing programs that we'll be touching on. We do file annual reports, some of which go through this committee. Hopefully you received one just a few weeks ago that we'll be touching on, as well as you can check out our website, which has great information, great success stories, and lots of different metrics on the successes that we're having on behalf of the state. As far as the range of programs we administer at Kansas Housing, they truly run the gamut, representing wherever people are in their housing journey. We fund homeless shelters and domestic violence centers. We provide different community solution programs, including the CSBG program you're going to be hearing about shortly. We finance actual housing development in urban and rural areas alike through tax credits, through different funds, primarily from the federal government, but recently from the state as well. We've got a down payment assistance program, which is wonderful to get people in the door of their own home to promote homeownership. We value and pursue weatherization, including with some of the great agencies that run our CSBG program around the state. So if your constituents need weatherization services, we very much encourage you to check those out. And of course, we have a healthy compliance department, not only because we're federally funded, but also because we know that if we're going to be good long-term neighbors, if we're going to build quality homes that are going to last for 30 years, we want to make sure that they're serving the people that they're intended to serve and that they're built quality. Turning to the CSBG program, I want to make sure I'm doing a shout out to a couple of key partners that are in the room today. We've got the Kansas Association of Community Action Programs, Jessica, who leads that great organization, representing those different 8 community action agencies. I believe they submitted some separate testimony that I'd encourage you to check out as you have time. We also have representatives from ECAN and from NECAP, based out of Ottawa and Hiawatha, respectively. Great partners, and as I mentioned, we have 8 different agencies around the state. I also want to do a shout out to the KHRC team, Moniz and Marilyn, who do wonderful work on behalf of KHRC and the state to make sure that our funds are spent well, that we're serving the people that we're intending to serve. Each year, KHRC receives about $6.2 million from the federal government for the CSBG program, 90% of which is directly distributed to the different community action agencies. The remainder is used for both administration and for discretionary grants. My written testimony actually provides some great metrics about the 7,000 households that we've assisted, the 14,000 people, the 2,100 persons with disability. We can go down the list. But the important thing is that these funds are responsive to local communities. So if people in Southeast Kansas feel that what they really need is transportation for seniors, we're able to provide that service through CCAP. If people in inner city, Kansas feel like they want to use their resources, we're in Sedgwick County for employment services, we're able to provide that as well. CSBG dollars can be used for any kind of anti-poverty efforts, whether it's housing stability, income and asset building, employment services, transportation, food services, again, responsive to local communities. And we're honored to work alongside some great partners to make this happen. Here's a map showing our different community action agencies around the state and their coverage area. As you can see, if you live in Kansas, in any county, you have a CSBG, a community action agency assigned to you. In this presentation, the links are embedded so that, or you can certainly check out our website to find out more information on that. And we've got wonderful success stories that are highlighted in our annual report, from Coffee County school supply drives and partnerships with different foundations and employers, to different food distribution, and even stories about people who just needed emergency dental care that allowed them to be able to work or to go to school. It's these types of success stories that are happening around the state because of the success of CSBG, and we are honored to be the administrator for the program on behalf of the state. We're honored to be partners with some wonderful friends. We're honored to see the good work that's being replicated around the state through this program. The reason I'm giving the update on this program today is every 3 years, by federal requirement, we have to give that update and make sure that you all are informed of the good work that we're doing, but also field any questions you have. Mr. Chairman, if you're okay, I may just wait until after my presentation and just open up the questions generally. Does that work? Okay.
That'd be fine.
I will go ahead and jump into the remainder of the presentation, which is just a more general reminder of the different successes we're making on the state front. I'm getting new development resources from you all. This all started, even though KHRC has celebrated 21 years of existence now, back in 2021, we worked with partners around the states in your different districts to try to take a snapshot of what the housing needs are in the state. The goals that came out of this year-long process and surveys and 70-plus community meetings around the state were that we want to add or free up more middle-income housing. We want to make sure that we're diversifying the types of housing that we have around the state. We want to extend housing security. We want to increase reinvestment. We know that our state housing stock is aging. We need to make sure that we're addressing the building trades labor shortage, because if we don't have plumbers, if we don't have people going into construction, not only are we not serving our constituents now, but we're not serving our future generations of people needing housing. Finally, we want to make sure that we're extending existing human capital resources. We brought all of this great information together. There's links embedded in this presentation that you can check out. It's still very relevant, even though it's a couple years old now. But I'm excited to share that this wasn't just a study that sat on a shelf and collected dust. We worked with you all, the policymakers, and have made a tremendous impact and successes these last couple years. I do want to just make sure I highlight just what we're still seeing as far as housing needs around the state. This is just a graph just showing rural housing needs. We're estimating that between 3,700 and 4,800 homes are needed just in our rural communities every year in order to make sure that we're attractive to employers, that we're able to reinvest in our downtown communities, that we're able to revitalize our rural communities. Again, this is just rural communities. Just as an example, the city of Topeka just recently did a housing study that just in the city of Topeka, every year they're needing 720 new homes. You can replicate that exponentially with Johnson County, with Wichita, with some of our larger urban areas. The fact is that we need more homes to be able to be attractive, to be able to compete with other states, to be able to ensure that our young people are staying in our rural and urban communities alike. Which is why we all worked with you rolling out that housing study, and in 2022, we passed a historic legislative session in our state, $62 million for moderate income housing, or MIH, as you sometimes hear it. 2 new state tax bills. There was an affordable housing tax credit, which I'll touch on briefly later, as well as a Kansas housing investor tax credit. One thing we love in the housing world is acronyms. So you're going to be hearing a lot of those, but that one we like to refer to as the KHITC program. We've got new revolving loan funds that are being utilized by our different cities and counties, as well as some continued funding for the moderate income housing program in 2023 and last session, 2024. Where are we now? I think that's what you're really interested in, and I will tell you that we are making tremendous progress in the state. Of the $22 million in 2022 that was initially passed, 100% has been awarded. 89% of those projects have already started construction. The dollars are being spent, the homes are being built, the neighborhoods are being revitalized. The work is happening in your districts and across the state. Of the $20 million in 2022 that we received, 100% is awarded, 72% of construction is underway. Now, we all know the housing is expensive. We all know the housing development takes time. And to see these recurring funds, these recurring investments, we're seeing developers come from all over our state, homegrown, as well as from outside, ensuring that we're investing, that we're getting this housing built, which was one of the real needs identified in our housing study. Of the $12 million in 2024, our first round closed in November. We had 44 different applications requesting $26 million this round alone in 40 different counties. Finally, the new Kansas Housing Investor Tax Credit, we've been able to award $36 million in housing investment across the state. These are real dollars, but they're touching real lives, making real homes for our citizens. I should note that, just going back to this last slide, there is a link embedded about a webinar that we had for our stakeholders. I believe we had almost 700 different participants over the summer, and we're trying to make sure that we're keeping not only you as our policymakers, but also our constituents and our partners informed on the successes we're making with this program. Turning now to the Kansas Affordable Housing Tax Credit. This is sometimes known as the state LIHTC or sometimes KAHTC. This is a major resource, a dollar-for-dollar tax credit that was funded back in that 2022 legislative session. You've had some discussions, and we expect some discussions about the fiscal cost of this credit. So we want to make sure that you're hearing about the successes that come along with it, and I'm certainly happy to discuss the fiscal cost as well. But just as an example, in 2023, we were able to fund 2,200 new homes. 2024, 2,600 new homes across the state. There is no cost to the state for the first 3 years of the credit because we're issuing the credits, we're allocating them, but the credits can't be claimed until the developments are complete. That ensures that the properties are guaranteed to be built. There's not a lot of government programs that you can say that about, but we guarantee that these are built before any tax credits are claimed. Not to mention the affordability on these properties continues for 30 plus years. And the reason that there's a lot of cost in getting them built is because for month after month, for 30 years, these apartments are affordable. They rent for hundreds of dollars below market rate for each one of these apartment units that we're building. Not to mention, we were able to leverage hundreds of millions of dollars in private activity bond cap, which is administered through the Department of Commerce. For many years, I've been before you all and getting fielded questions about why aren't we using this federal resource? And the reason that we couldn't use it is because we weren't able to leverage it with our own resources. We're now able to do that. We've got a resource, the state LIHTC, the Kansas Affordable Housing Tax Credit, which in 1 year, 2024, allowed us to leverage $300 million in federal private activity resource to finance 14 different developments across the state. These are real successes, and I've got just a little graph showing you the uptick with these resources that we've been able to administer through this tax credit. So zooming out a bit now, I've thrown a lot of different programs, a lot of different resources. Let's talk about just globally where we're at. On your left is a map showing where we were able to invest in 2021 before the state development resources were passed. In the 2 subsequent years, you can see that we were able to broaden exponentially the number of counties that we've been able to cover. We're thrilled to be able to touch so many more communities, so many smaller communities in rural areas, as well as our inner city partners as well. Where are we now? Well, we've doubled the rate of our housing investments across the state. In 2021, 1,000 homes were funded. In the 2 subsequent years, 6,500 homes. You, in your districts, I'm sure, are hearing about our state housing crisis. It's been because we've had this long housing problem in the state and disinvestment and never enough resources. We're finally addressing not just the crisis, but the underlying housing program. $1.65 billion, the total development budget that we've been able to finance these past couple of years, going directly into our state, directly into our communities and our neighborhoods, directly into our private tax coffers. We're thrilled to be a partner with so many good stakeholders around the state. Hopefully you're on our great social media pages, but we are celebrating successes, whether it's in Colby, whether it's in Wamego with a historic hospital that we were able to revitalize, whether it's Stafford County. There are these developments coming online, new homes for our veterans, for our seniors, for our persons with disabilities, and for our families, allowing communities to be able to redevelop and revitalize. Finally, just a reminder that we do not operate these programs or administer resources or develop housing in a vacuum. We are competing with other states in order to be able to attract developers and builders and suppliers. We need to make sure that we're being competitive, and we've been able to do that because of the resources you all have given us to invest in our communities. Here's a map just showing all of the other states around that have specifically the tax credit program that I mentioned. And the second map is broadening out to all of the other state housing resources. So again, we're not alone. This is what we have to do to remain competitive, but we're seeing real return for our jobs, for our economy, and for our fellow Kansans. Lastly, just a reminder, of course, that our housing challenges continue. Again, I'm sure you're hearing it in your district. It's in the news every day. These are just clippings from the last couple weeks around talking about how the lack of affordable housing is tied to an 18% increase in homelessness, how there's a low inventory which creates high prices, how mortgage rates continue to be high, how our homeless population is costing our emergency services millions of dollars for our communities. Housing needs are severe, and if we're not addressing them by building more affordable housing, we're going to be paying them some other way. So I thank you on behalf of KHRC. I thank you on behalf of our constituents and our stakeholders and our partners and our communities that we're doing it the right way, that we're putting it into our housing supply so that we're not having all these ancillary issues and effects that aren't being addressed. I've covered a lot of ground. I'm happy to open up the questions. Our contact information is in this slide. We'd love to hear from you and hope that you're signed up for our different contact lists. Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to field any questions.
Thank you, Ryan. Appreciate the presentation today. Questions? Senator Fagg?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your presentation.
Certainly.
When you was talking about the KHRC, the thing caught my eye was the energy efficiency. Kansas is ranked 49th in that area. And so I'm sitting here, I've been around you take like a mother of 3 kids that's renting a place, the rent's high. And she said, Mike, my utility bills is over $500. So I'm sitting there thinking, you know, somehow we talk about our cost of energy, that efficiency's got to be addressed somehow, because if we don't get out and find some ways to get the guy that owns the property to help with that, maybe incent everybody and that kind of thing, it kind of pyramids on itself. So
Absolutely.
there used to be a program a long time ago that they run out and did an energy audit on a house for free. And then they gave you some ideas on what you could do for your house, and then had some incentives in that. Do they still have that kind of stuff out there?
Thanks for that thoughtful question, Senator. And yes, the answer, we actually administer the state's weatherization program. We get funds from the Department of Energy, from some of the state's LEAP money that goes through DCF, as well as some private utility dollars from some Kansas Gas Service, Westar, Evergy, I guess it is. But we're able to utilize those resources through great partners, going back to our CSBG program around the state, as well as some other good quality stakeholder partners. But the way that program works is that we have every county across the state is covered by a weatherization agency. For free, both homeowners and tenant-occupied homes can apply for this program through some of these different partners. These partners will come out and they will do a full energy utility audit of the home, as you mentioned. They'll be able to use infrared cameras. They use different computer programs that actually identify where the cost savings will be. And what's great about this program is it's proven that unless the upgrades, the energy efficiency upgrades actually are an approved measure under the system, unless that we can show that they pay for themselves, then they're not going to be approved. We're able to actually put in, tighten up the home, put in new insulation, maybe a new HVAC system. By doing that, we're showing that over enough years that those energy resources are going to pay for themselves. But you actually bring up an even bigger point, and that is that energy use in our households is a key determinant of affordability. We can't separate the two. That if we're going to develop, if we're going to rehab quality affordable housing, we have to take into account the energy usage. And that's why we bring value to you as the State Housing Finance Agency, because we administer these federal resources like weatherization. We're able to show our partners and you all as policymakers that we can get the right resources for the right needs in the right homes. So if that's weatherizing a home in Colby, if that is identifying that it's really more of a rehab project of an older building that can be financed through our MIH program or maybe the Kansas Housing Investor Tax Credit, we've got the right people, we've got the right partners, we've got the right programs, and we're able to bring that value to you.
Mr. Chairman, follow up.
Senator Fagg.
I'm with you, and I'm excited about that. I'm still hung on if we're ranked 49th, we're missing something. So the question is what we're missing and how can we improve that? You guys sit around powwow about that kind of stuff?
It's a huge subject of discussion, and some of it, to be honest, is just resources. We don't have a lot of specific resources set aside for rehab projects, which are those that are specifically, usually it's older homes that are the most major users of energy. We do have some of those resources through things like MIH that we talked about, but each one of the resources that we have are targeted for specific needs. So MIH can only be used in our rural communities. It's a wonderful program. It brings real value, but it's not able to be used in more urban areas that may sometimes have some of the most energy inefficient homes. But what we are able to do with these new resources that you're giving us are able to really, as I said, double the amount of new production, which are going to be more energy efficient units, homes for our Kansans.
Senator Fagg.
Final question. When I look at the number of houses that you built, let's say in 2024, do you have a map that shows, or how many houses in which counties? We know we've had them in all these places. The question is, how many in each county is my question.
Another thoughtful question. I'd have to circle back with the committee on that. I think we probably have that data to that specific, but if you don't mind, I'll just follow back up.
If share it with us and we'll distribute it.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Senator Holscher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you so much for being here. It seems like we've had some hurdles in terms of getting to affordable housing, and some areas where we have a lot of population growth. We've seen apartments, but then where the challenge has been is sometimes those apartments that are developed don't seem to be that much more affordable. So what are we missing in those terms as far as whether it's a traditional house or apartments, getting it more to that affordability range?
Another thoughtful question, Senator, and complex answer, I guess, response to it. Off the top of my head, there's a couple things. One, before we had these programs that I've talked about today, the market was addressing the needs. The return for developers was in high valued homes, whether it was single family, whether it was high valued apartment complexes in Kansas City, Johnson County. That's where builders were able to go build because that's where the dollars could be made. With these new resources, suddenly the dollars are available for all different tiers of incomes, And that's a huge step, and that's why we're making real impact. The other big change that we've seen is now we're actually able to finance low income or affordable housing, as well as moderate income. There's a lot of people that make too much to qualify for the federal housing resources, some of which I've talked about today, but they simply don't make enough to build a home or to purchase. You know, these are our firefighters and our police officers and our nurses and people that we need for our communities to be successful. But because of you all and because of the different resources that you've allocated, we're finally able to designate specific funding to get these middle and lower income buildings that have affordability restrictions for 30 years built. So we're addressing it on a couple different fronts. We're incentivizing developers to build. We're financing different levels of housing and trying to close those gaps. But there's a lot of kind of economics 101, and it just takes resources.
Senator Petty.
So mine really is along the same lines as Senator Holscher, because I know along with the affordability is the communities being able to attract developers even when they're, and this would be in metropolitan areas where you have population, but they're not in, they're a little more out of the center area where developers can see that they can build, you know, $500,000 up dollar homes as opposed to a $200,000 home. So are these resources a bit helping to do that, to fill in that kind of gap, to get those developers to actually, because I've heard from some communities in the metropolitan area that said we can't even get the developers to want to, when we have this housing need, to build.
Yeah, that's a huge need, Senator. The developer capacity in our state was so low. I mean, we lost so many builders since the economic decline in 2008, the housing recession, that we're behind. That's that housing problem that I keep talking about that quickly exasperates to a housing crisis. But with these resources, we now are able to finance development in some of the most difficult to develop areas. In fact, some of the resources that you all passed, like the Housing Investor Tax Credit, like the Moderate Income Housing Program, actually have priorities given for some of our smallest communities, some of our inner city areas that are the most difficult to develop, that have the biggest gap. What we've seen is that by investing in some of these, say the Moderate Income Housing Program, we were able to finance a development in Alma down the road. It was a quality development. We were able to save this historic structure. The best part, though, about that is that that developer was a homegrown construction contractor that learned how to participate in the program, that gained good partners with KHRC, with some of our stakeholder partners around the state. They got their feet wet, and they've now applied for additional different rounds, including the Kansas housing, the affordable housing tax credit. So we're seeing homegrown developers, which I think is a wonderful side effect of the investment that you're making. You know, we've got some great talent in our local communities, and it's really difficult to attract people to some of our smallest communities from Texas or from Colorado, but we're making it competitive. We're also trying to invest in our local talent, and we're doing that together. And it takes resources, and it takes partners, and it takes expertise, and it takes some kind of marriage of all of those. But we've made real headway these last couple of years.
Other questions? Senator Peck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the Community Services Block Grant, you say it's federally funded through HHS. How much, you may have told us, but how much is the total dollar amount that they provide, we'll say annually?
And I want to just refer to my testimony. I believe it was 6.2 million, maybe? Make sure I'm telling you the right number here. 6.2 million, and there's 8 community action agencies, and there's a funding formula based on kind of population size and geographic area that we distribute that to those different 8 partners around the state.
You mentioned of that money, 10%, 90% are direct grants, 10% for administration and discretionary grants. Of the 10%, how much would you say goes to discretionary grants?
So KHRC sets aside 5% for discretionary grants of that total allocation, and of that 5%, we're able to finance some very specific projects, and whether that's Community Action of Topeka, whether that's Harvest America out in western Kansas, it may even be some Habitat affiliates and some of those non-community action agencies that have a specific project that's going to kind of serve some of those same needs, transportation, employment, food services, those types of different needs around the state. So that's how we specifically use that 5% of the discretionary resources.
And then, so that would mean 5% goes to administration
That's correct, Senator.
of the 6.2.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions? Senator Fagg.
One quick follow-up on Senator Peck and that sentence he was there. I'd like to have the list of the 8 agencies that receive the 90%. I don't see a list here, but it'd be interesting who actually gets that. Thank you.
Absolutely. In fact, Senator, it's in your materials here. I want to say it's actually, if I didn't list it in the actual the written testimony here, there is actually the PowerPoint that I provided lists all of the 8 agencies as well as their contact information.
Okay, thank you. I'll find it in there. I just didn't see it in the presentation.
Sure. Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none. Ryan, thank you for being here today. Appreciate the update.
It was a pleasure, Mr. Chairman.
Committee, I would also point out that we have written comments from the Kansas Association of Community Action Programs, so you might read that also. I think unless there's anything else anyone has, we are adjourned. Thank you.